What is now known as the Cambridge line was built in stages between 1846 to 1852. Initially called the Royston and Hitchin Railway, it was absorbed into the Great Eastern Railway in 1897, which was then itself absorbed into the London North Eastern Railway in 1923, which was still operating a line in 1928. In 1892, the East Anglian Cement Company opened a plant near the village of Shepreth in England. It was the first plant to make Portland cement by the wet process, with materials being supplied by a nearby quarry. Access to the plant was via a level crossing at the end of Angle Lane. The crossing was 40 feet over 3 lines, the 2 main lines and the siding serving the plant. This crossing is unmanned with self-closing gates, which are larger than the northern side to accommodate a sharp, tight turn upon entering the plant. These gates were operated manually, often by the drivers of the vehicles using it, and whilst padlocks were provided, these were not often used. In the decade after the First World War, lorry traffic to the site via the crossing had increased to around 50 vehicles a month. This was still the case running into August of 1928. On the 18th of August 1928, the 10 a.m. express passenger train from Cambridge to King's Cross was travelling down the Cambridge line. The train consisted of 5 carriages and a horse box, being pulled by C2 class number 3253 with a combined weight of over 239 tons. On board was a driver, a fireman, a guard, a horse, and at least 21 passengers. At more or less the same time, experienced lorry driver Leonard Sparks was preparing to leave the cement plant in his 6-ton Dennis lorry. He had arrived at 9:45 that morning to collect 4.5 tons of lime to take to Enfield for a private contractor. At around 10:09 a.m, Sparks set off, having to perform a sharp right-hand turn before heading out over the level crossing, moving at about 5 miles an hour. According to railway workers nearby, there was no sign that Sparks had checked whether or not it was safe to cross. At 10:11 a.m, with the lorry's front wheels on the down line, the express appeared, and despite its brakes being immediately applied, the train collided with the lorry at about 55 miles an hour. The express, now covered in lime, derailed, with the locomotive violently being turned around as it dug into the ground, coming to rest over 100 yards from the point of impact. Fireman Richard Henry Brown was killed in the derailment. The engine driver survived but was badly scalded by escaping steam. The tender and the carriages pushed past the locomotive, coming to rest upright about 30 feet further on. The guard and 21 passengers were injured, with only one requiring hospital treatment, and most being able to complete their journeys later that day, with one passenger noting that none of her eggs in the basket that she was carrying had been broken. As for the horse box, passenger A.J. Kerr later recounted, "Next to our carriage was a horse box which had been completely smashed. Only the wheels were left. At the time of the collision, a horse was in the box. It was thrown to the other side of the line, where it lay for some little time with considerable amount of wreckage on top of it. Then it scrambled up and bolted down the line. It had miraculously escaped practically uninjured. The Dennis lorry was smashed away from the line and the wreck caught fire. Driver Sparks was pulled from it and taken to hospital, but died a few hours later." A report into derailment by Colonel A.C. Trent was published on the 20th of October 1928. The primary cause of the accident was clear. Lorry driver Sparks did not exercise reasonable care when crossing the line. The crossing itself also came under scrutiny. particularly the northern end where drivers had to negotiate a sharp turn. Also visibility was poor, noting that it was difficult to see if the down line was clear until they were on it. Trench recommended that the crossing be widened and the entrance of the plant be modified to eliminate the sharp turn. He also recommended that a sign that impeded vision to be altered, and the company should employ a system where customers are piloted across the line by an employee. Locomotive 3253 was rebuilt after the accident and ran until she was withdrawn in May of 1937 and scrapped. The East Anglian Cement Company plant at Shepreth would run until 1934 before being closed and subsequently demolished, with the land being returned to agriculture.